Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the J Free 906 podcast. Shannon and Mike along with me tonight. We're going to be talking about the last two episodes of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, episodes number 10 and 11, I believe they were. Um, Mike is frozen. Oh, there he is. You were frozen there for a moment, Mike.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem. How you guys doing? Had a good
Good.
fourth?
How are you?
Very good.
Great.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to be back in the house again and back home and a crazy time on the road. I got to meet Shannon in person. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
It was great.
Yeah, was able to stop and see her on our travels, and that was awesome. And I really, really appreciated that. And you taking the time out of your busy day for Christina and I. And our special guest is he must be busy at the moment. He's gotten the message that we
Got a lot
started
of irons in the fire, right? I mean,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
That's
on.
right.
Busiest guy I know.
It's not like he's never busy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
But
so
perhaps
hopefully
he'll
he'll
just be fashionably late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb, it was like I did reach out to him this morning. Thomas, I did, by the way, and talked to him a little bit this morning, just to a little reminder. And but yeah, like those guys aren't ever busy, right? So he'll be along shortly, I'm sure, and we'll get him on here when he is available. So episode 10 was called "What the Gel." And I'm thinking back now because I didn't do a podcast last week, and I'm trying to remember all the stuff. I do have my notes here and a notes from Jan. Thank you very much, Jan Anderson, for all of that. And I did want to say, if you like the content of our show here tonight, please subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. That really helps us out a lot. We love those subscriptions to the channel. And if you'd like to help support the show in any way, we got a lot of different ways you can do that. There's a link down below for that as well. So, and I appreciate all the people who do help support the show. Thank you so very, very much. It helps to keep it all working and keep it going. So, and I'm looking forward to Phenomicon, wearing my Phenomicon t-shirt tonight. That's coming up here in just a couple of months. We'll be over at Phenomicon. I hope to meet all you guys out there, as many people that are going. I hope, let me know in the chat. Give me a yes if you are going, and wish I was if you're not, I guess. But I'd like to know, I'm just kind of curious of all the people that are here watching right now, who might be going to Phenomicon this year. So it was a great time. This will be my third trip out there, and I am so looking forward to it. One thing too, I wanted to mention, I was just turned on recently to a podcast. You know me, I love this weird and interesting stuff, sci-fi type stuff, thriller type stuff. And I was turned on recently to a podcast. It's a story that was written and by a friend. His name is Matthew, and he wrote this. Wrote it, and he is doing all the voiceover work for this. And it's season 1 is out, and I listened to all 16 episodes. None of them are real long. Some of them are pretty short. I do have a link for it down below. It's called Radio Nowhere. Radio Nowhere. It's really cool.
It's a great story, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's one of those stories where
Really good.
you get dragged into it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I marathon listened. It's all just audio. It's out at Spotify. It's on Apple Podcast too, I think, or Audible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I listened to it on Spotify. But it is really good. I got a link for it down below called Radio Nowhere. Check it out if you want to. It's really, really good, folks. And I'm anticipating season 2 to come out. Yeah, so good stuff. Yeah, it was really you got to give it a listen too, Mike. It's if you like,
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it is
really good. It's interesting. It's I think it touches on a lot of the fun sci-fi stuff that we talk about, just having to do with the paranormal or yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah. It threw me for a loop too. It caught me by surprise on a few points too. So that's always good. I love that. When
I think Mike is frozen again.
What's that?
Mike was frozen again. He had the expression of excitement on his face.
Trying not to move. No, I'm just not moving. Don't spoil it.
He doesn't want to get caught with that open mouth.
Yeah, we've got weather in the area, so my satellite internet is a little bit
Yeah.
spotty at the moment.
All right. Well, hopefully that gets cleared up. Anyway, we are here tonight. We are going to be talking about Skinwalker Ranch, the secret of Skinwalker Ranch, episode number 10, What the Gel, and then episode 11, and I'm at a loss for the name of that one all of a sudden. But
Bad to
both
the drone or something like that. It's a pun of some sort, some
bad to the
sorts, right?
drone,
It's
Bad to the
something like
bone,
that,
bad
isn't
to the
it?
drone. Yeah, it's bad to the drone.
bad to the drone.
Oh,
All right, that's what it was.
bad to drone. I thought it was bad to the drone.
Yeah.
No, it is. Yeah, bad to the drone,
Bad to
as
the
in
Okay,
drone.
good.
All right.
bad to the
Yeah.
bone, right?
Anyway, it was really good. It was very, very interesting, and I'm so glad to I watched them all again, obviously, because it was a really good one. Right at the beginning, and I want to be able to talk to Thomas about this, hopefully, when he gets here. Um, and again, for those of you who may just popped in, Thomas Winterton is running late. We're hoping that he will get free and pop in here momentarily, but we're going to continue on until he does. So really good of him to take time out of his busy day if he if he can. Hopefully everything is okay with him. I hope. But I wanted to touch on right off the bat at the beginning of episode number 10. They talked about the calf that had the medical issue from episode number 9. Remember the calf that was going around and around and around in circles, and then it had the white eyes that were hemorrhaging and everything. I think the report that we got, and they were asked in the insider program, we did get information about that, and they were asked about the calf. And the calf is okay. Once it left the ranch, I mean, it can't see. I guess I don't know if it's completely blind. It did seem like it had a little bit of sight. I don't know, but hard to imagine that. Uh, he the calf is okay. It was doing better once it got off the ranch, and the mother was fine and everything too. So that was the word we had as of last week, I think it was, that everything was okay. Now, keep in mind that this was a year ago that all of that happened. Um, but I remember that Travis was talking about the microwave exposure or gamma ray radiation exposure, which could cause that sort of thing, but yet there was no indication of either. They had no detection of either of those. Matter of fact, I don't think do you remember, Mike or Shannon? Do you remember if they didn't really have any indication of anything really weird going on at that time?
No, no, and I was impressed that of course, Travis ran right out into the middle of it.
Hmm.
Right where the calf
Yeah.
had been. He runs out there with a meter, and they didn't seem to find anything.
Yeah, not too much of anything at all. Um, but and it brings up that whole talk about, what's going to happen if they drill or they dig. There was always the stories from the Shermans and the Myers and everything about don't dig or don't dig on the ranch because bad things happen. And
Mhm.
they've been doing a lot of digging and drilling lately. Is this a case of that? I don't know. I mean, there were some people that talked about that particular thing that could turn the calf's eyes white, make them hemorrhage. Um, I was listeria, listeria.
Yes,
Is
yes,
that what it's called? Something like that.
yep.
So anyway, hopefully, it doesn't happen. That's always the fear that if it happens to an animal, could it happen to one of the team members? Um, and I in this could have very well been something that, and I remember Thomas saying, making a comment, and we'll have to ask him about that. But there was a time where he said he didn't regain its eyesight. Okay, thank you. That there was a moment where he really questioned whether or not he even wants to be on the ranch anymore. He said there was a time when that really hit home. And I don't know if it was that. I'm assuming it was that incident right there that made him feel that way. And, it would, kind of shake your world, would it not?
Yep.
For sure. I mean, that's the stuff that you really worry about. I think especially the team members who have had medical issues happen, which has been
A few
what,
of
half of them at least.
them. Mhm.
Caleb, uh, Thomas, Travis. I mean, we don't. There hasn't been anything like on record as far as on the show goes for like Erik or or Bryant, but and then got Tom, Tom
Mhm.
and Candace. At least those are the ones that have been like documented on the show.
Right.
So that's about half the team
Mhm.
thereabouts. Which is really, it's always really interesting, I think, when that stuff happens because it's like, why only half the team? If they're all collectively sort of together, same deal with the calf. Like if it's with a whole herd of cows,
Battle.
cattle,
Cattle, yeah.
plural, cattle, then why just the calf? So
Right.
then that does make me wonder, like, oh, is it actually something else outside of my, like, why only target the one
Right.
calf? Or but yeah, it's really interesting that it's just been sort of like selective individuals or selective animals
Mm.
when there are normally quite a few people around.
Yep.
So
I did
yeah.
get a Leanne brought up a thing here. Thank you very much, Leanne, by the way. Appreciate that very much. On 60 Minutes about secret weapon firing a high energy beam of microwaves or ultrasound. Russia using the weapon to damage hearing brains of U.S. intelligence officials. Did any of you listen to that program last week? I did not.
I
I
did.
have heard about targeting weapons such as that.
Yep.
Just got a message from Thomas. He is jumping on now, it says. So he'll be here in
Perfect.
a moment. Yep.
Uh, um, yeah, I didn't watch it either, but one of the things that I study is sound science, just in
Mhm.
general. Like we know that certain frequencies can put your brain into different, some can provoke alpha waves and some beta, and like the sound science, I think, is a huge part of all of this,
Mm.
especially because we've seen it. We've seen the ranch respond to different frequencies of sound. So
Yes, we
none
have.
of that would surprise me if it was something similar to like the Havana syndrome, or like
Mm.
what she's talking referencing. There
Yep.
could certainly be something underlying there.
Yeah, and
That's
that
the
would really
freakiest stuff.
yeah, exactly. It would really have to make you question, wanting to be there.
Hmm.
Sure. Dedicated to this research for sure. The guys are when they're in such a and it's like again we talked about that before how people kind of poo poo what's going on. They're out there just making money. It's just a show. Blah blah blah. There's nothing going on. I just totally disagree, and I would have to be very cautious about that. And again, that's why they're very cautious about letting people come on the ranch. It's fenced off and gated off, and uh,
Hmm.
they don't want to have anybody wander on and have something happen to them. So um, I don't know. Would insurance cover some of the you got beam? You went into a portal and didn't come back. Would your insurance company cover that? I don't know.
Didn't portal coverage, the writer for portal coverage. Yeah. Sorry.
Portal
Out of
coverage.
pocket that.
Little coverage exemption on your insurance. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, anyway, digress there a little bit. But anyway, so that was interesting. But the calf is okay or much better once it left the ranch. We heard that. So good news there. I know
Which
somebody
is
in the
great.
chat asked about that. Yeah, exactly. But what caused it? They simply do not know at this point. Um, so we're going to jump over next, the drilling program that they've got going on at the ranch. And this has been you see the guys, you know, trying to make this happen where they're still trying to drill the first of the two boreholes going up into the mesa and bending in their way up and then poking out on the top and, back a little ways, but on the top of the mesa so that they could put some electronics in there and try to get a read on what is the anomaly that's inside there. They want to get some electronics inside these boreholes. But in the problem with all of that is trying to get the borehole drilled in the first place. And you see the frustration, especially on the show, last night. You see the frustration on their faces. And they know that when they get that call on the radio from Thomas, they're just like, oh, geez, what's going to be the problem now? And they continue to lose the signal from the beacon that is inside of the drill head. You've seen them take that piece out, and I do have some pictures of that. But they open up that right there behind the drill head, the tip of it. They open that up, and then they take out this battery operated unit. They keep backing it out, replacing it, and putting it back in. But something is blocking the signal. Thoughts on that? I mean, what the heck? I mean, I
don't
don't.
want to get too far ahead on anything because wait, so the gel was the first episode, right? Oh, there he
Correct.
is.
Yeah, episode 10. Hey, Thomas, how you doing? You're muted, sir. Let's see.
There we go. Can you hear
There
me?
you go. Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Yeah. How you
I'm
doing?
Hi, Thomas.
terribly
Hey.
sorry for my
Oh, it's okay.
late arrival.
That's okay.
We
You
were
and
joking
Caleb
about that.
arrive in the same way.
It's not like
Yeah,
you guys
those
are
two-
never busy, right? So hey, you know what?
We
But
understand.
yeah, we do.
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can somehow fix the lighting a little bit.
Oh, okay.
All right. Does that work?
But honestly, I tell you honestly, I do appreciate very, very much you taking time out of your busy day to join us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we do appreciate that very much. I know it's been a while since you've been on, and we've had everybody else. We had, Erik and Pete Kelsey and Caleb, and and it's like, oh man, we got to get Thomas back on here again. You were my very first Skinwalker Ranch guest that I ever had. So, and here you are again. So, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's fun to be with you guys. So,
well, I tell you, that's not Thomas. He's not. Oh, you're not wearing his hat. Oh, well, there you go. So,
no, I traded the hat in today for a button-up collared shirt and business attire. So,
Do people recognize you when you're not in your cowboy hat? Is it like a Clark Kent Superman type deal where you have to be in your ranch garb to get recognized?
it used to be that way. So I would say for the first 3 seasons, when it changed is it used to be that people would only recognize me if I had my hat on, but that changed when our series hit Netflix. And that's when I started noticing a definite change in people recognizing me, was when the series got put on Netflix. And then people started recognizing me, but it was funny because they would still be like, it looks like him, but I'm not quite sure. So they would always approach cautiously and say, you look like that Skinwalker Ranch guy. And so, but more and more now, it's getting to the point where I'm being recognized whether I'm wearing a hat or in business attire. So
good. That's
Good to
great.
know.
Well, it could be good, I guess. I guess in some cases it may not be great, but yeah. So, but anyway, well, thank you very much for coming on. And we were just talking about the calf, and I know that. Well, you just lost your lighting now.
yeah, I don't know what happened other than my seat was high and I dropped the seat and then the light went out. So I just finished a business meeting and they were gracious enough to let me grab their boardroom or one of them. But this light is, let me flip it around and.
Okay. Well, I think he hit a button. He must have disconnected there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get him back here in just a moment. And in the meanwhile, we'll continue on with the drill program there. But losing that signal, and one of the things that the guys mentioned about that was when they asked the driller guys about it, about the particular losing the signal, and he had said it's like the only time he's ever seen that before is when they go under like a steel plate on a road.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen them when they're doing some kind of construction work. You've seen those big steel plates that they put across the road so we can continue to drive over it. And if they're underneath one of those, that will block the signal of the beacon. Okay. So now take that to the Mesa. And they've talked about this hard substance, whatever it is that they can't drill into. It deflects the drill either up or down in a curving away from where they want to go, preventing them from taking the direction that they want. And blocking the signal. Could it be some sort of a steel? Something made out of steel.
Well, they did get metal chips that came out. So, and he's back.
Yeah, that's much
there
better.
You go.
Oh,
So,
there you
You're
go.
all good, Thomas.
No, I'm excited to visit with you guys about the drilling because I don't know if one of the things you picked up as you watch this is that we're literally, I think one of the times that Travis was talking, he said they've been here for more than a month drilling.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
the drilling exercise, I mean, to pull the rod out of the hill, those rods are like 10 feet lengths, I think.
Mhm.
And so you pull one out and it unscrews it, puts it in the rack. Then they have to bring the drill forward, screw it back on, pull it out 10 feet. It's a 10 foot by 10 foot proposition. And so each time we have to pull that out, it's a long process. When the rod broke off up in there. And so they were there for a long time drilling. And specific to this beacon, this was fascinating because we had this beacon that operated fine, the first couple times. And every time we thought it was the battery came back perfectly good.
Right.
And these guys, we actually interviewed quite a few different drilling companies going into this. We had some of them come out to the ranch, get eyes on the actual location of where it was we were going to be drilling. We wanted them to fully understand what they were getting themselves into.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that we went with Mark Construction is they're out of Colorado, but they're drilling in the hills. That's what they do. They're in the Rocky Mountains. They do a lot around Rifle, Colorado, Denver area. They have the sandstone mesas like we have, plus, the granite and the more extreme rock formations. And so we felt like they were highly qualified. They had a great track record, came highly recommended. We visited with them. They were sharp. And this terrain was nothing that they hadn't encountered 100 times before. And so, that's kind of preface going into this is a lot of work went on behind the scenes to ensure that we could be successful when we finally went and did this.
Yep.
I think that's a really important piece of information for the general viewing public to know.
Absolutely.
To know that it wasn't just like somebody that was like, oh, come be on this show to drill into, the Mesa, that you guys actually had interviews and you sought out who you thought were the best to do the job, and they still had difficulty. I feel bad for them.
Oh,
I feel
absolutely.
bad for them watching the drill bit break up, or at the beginning, whatever the first episode was that we saw it break. I'm like, oh man, that is rough and expensive. I imagine too.
Yep. And you mentioned too, Thomas, you talked about, letting them know, have them come out to the ranch, see what they're getting into, so they got a better idea of what it is that they're going to be put up against as much as you can. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, well, as much as you can, set aside the things that happen on the ranch all the time, things are breaking down and weird stuff happening and all of that. I know you guys try to warn people about that. Whether they take it seriously at first or not is something to be, and Pete has mentioned that many times. He kind of, because everybody comes out there so confident. And one of the things too is that when folks come out there, sometimes they, we get these people that just, will come on and I get the comments once in a while and they say, well, they did that on purpose. They had that breakdown on purpose. Or and I said, you know what? Think about this seriously. Well, these folks are professionals in whatever it is that they're doing. They're professionals. They're not going to want to come on national television, viewed around it, worldwide television, and have equipment failures. They're hoping that everything's going to be great. They can actually promote themselves to a degree by being on the show. Are they going to want an equipment failure? No, they're not. So, I try to remind people that, and here we are with this drill. And each time it was taken out, the batteries are changed, they're tested, everything's good. They have to recalibrate it, send it back in. And this time it didn't get as far as it did the first time, and they lost signal again. And the only thing that I can come up with is that there has to be something in the Mesa that's blocking the signal or affecting the signal in some way.
Definitely 100% affecting the signal. The way that this beacon works is obviously they've shown on the show how that little beacon sits inside the drill bit. And what they do, right there. And they calibrate it. So because with directional drilling, the way that it works is they've got that bit and the paddle on it determines which way that drill bit is going to head. It's got a little bit of a angle on the bit. And so depending on if that angle's, when they start pushing it, if it pushes it up or if it pushes it down. So the only way for them to know which direction that drill bit is headed is based on what that sensor beacon is telling them. The beacon is relaying up to that little handheld device, and it's giving him a couple different data points. One is the depth below the beacon of where that bit's at. The other is the position of the bit, on the rotational axis. The other one is the pitch, at what pitch it is, whether it's down or up. And then the other one is the strength of the signal. And the strength of the signal that's coming through, it tells you how strong that signal is getting from the beacon up to the unit. And there's a range that they operate in. And so when we're talking about losing signal, on television, again, going to the fact that, you've watched more than a month's worth of drilling in a couple episodes, and you go and look at how many minutes of each episode that drilling represents, you're seeing really a few minutes of hours and hours and hours and hours of drilling. Why that's important is, like with this beacon specifically, we're watching the signal strength on this vary as it's going up in there. And you would expect that. That's not unusual. But the device has a little line there with a triangle, and that's how you can track where it's at. Is the signal strength is the strongest when that little handheld is directly over top of the bit.
Makes sense.
So if you get too far back from it, the strength starts to die off on any direction. It's kind of that game of getting warmer. But then there's a little on the display, there's a picture, or a line, and it's got a little triangle, and it's showing where at below that beacon is in relation. Sorry, I can't talk today. My brain's fried. In relation to where that handheld is. And we're watching this device as the signal just cuts out completely. The device itself in the bit was still turned on. That bit, it'll go to sleep if after a certain amount of time of not turning, the beacon will put itself to sleep. But then when they get in and start spinning the bit, it wakes it up and it turns it on. It was running. So it was transmitting the signal. The signal was just not coming up through to the device. And we actually watched as the signal spread, meaning that the signal strength was the same, 20 feet, either direction. These are all things that these guys have never seen ever in any of their other jobs.
Wow. So something was actually deflecting it, but keeping it magnified or pumped up in some way. And I was looking at the signal that we have, and I got another picture here that I want to show. This was where Travis had the spectrum analyzer, and he was watching the signal. And this was when it was operating fine. Everything was working the way it should. And you could see the lines there doing what they're supposed to. But then I think it was after the second time, or after being pulled out and put back in, he was watching it, and then it just started getting all, wonky was the word I was going to use, as far as, the signal getting all over the place. And then at the same, TV time, on the same moment, you guys were talking about, and I forget the guy's name who was up there with the beacon or the receiver. Yeah. And he had commented to you that it was getting erratic. The signal was getting very erratic on his unit there. So, I mean, I hate to. Yeah, go ahead.
No, were you going to say something, Jeff?
Well, I was just going to say, I hate to put him on, Thomas. I hate to put you on the spot, because I know that we have to keep everything from season or episode 11 back. We can't go forward in time.
Right.
So I was going to ask about what do you think is happening there, but let's not even go there, because that might venture us.
You know what? We can expound a little bit on what has been shared. So here's an interesting thing. we're seeing not just one type of behavior with this beacon. We're seeing many different types of behavior, right? Whether it's cutting out completely, whether it's spreading. Travis and Erik were watching the signal spread there, which during those times we're seeing spreading with the handheld beacon as far as having a hard time identifying exactly where we're directly above it. I asked him if he had ever seen this before, and he said, no, we've never seen this before except for one time. And he said, when they're doing utilities in a city, and the construction company puts those metal plates over the road,
Yep.
they'll cover the trenches with those metal plates. Whenever they get close to those metal plates, they've seen some of the same similar characteristics that we were seeing with the beacon. And I find that very fascinating that they have seen some of that before. And it was when they were drilling underneath of a metal plate, and the metal was obviously raising havoc with the signal. So I found that very fascinating. And there's, oh my gosh, guys, there's a month's worth or 2 months worth of backstory with these guys. And I can't speak to all of it right now because more's to come, right? But there's a lot of data to share about this when the whole story's been told and we're free to talk about everything. There's a lot of data there to share it's just absolutely fascinating.
Can't wait for that. Shannon, go ahead.
I was gonna ask about how, like, you guys have touched on it being sort of an erratic signal, and then the first thing I thought of when the gel came out, obviously because I work with EEGs, I'm thinking of conducting gel. You have to put it, for us to be able to pick up brain waves, we can't use dry electrodes. We have to use a conductive gel material. Same things with when you have ultrasounds and stuff like that. So it did make me wonder if part of the conductivity of signals and things might be impacted by any type of gelatinous substance that would be found in the Mesa. And I'm not sure if anything, you guys have found out more about the gel or not, and if that could be a contributing factor to why it's stronger sometimes, not to account for when it cuts out, obviously, because that would do the exact opposite of how a gel like that would work. But
Interesting.
are we going to see anything else with the gel? Can you tell us that?
There is definitely more to speak to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much of that will be left to play yet, so I won't dive into that. But there is more. There's more to speak to that. Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Good. That's good to know. I wanted to bring this up real quick. And by the way, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that very much. And he asked a question: can't they use an older drill like before electronics, so whatever is in the Mesa works better? I don't know much about Thomas. You could probably speak to this better than any of us, or maybe even Mike. He's an engineer. But the older drills, I don't know that the direction, were they as directional as they are today with that beacon? Are they? I don't know.
No, they wouldn't be able to do not anywhere near with the precision. They really don't have any control. They would have no control over the direction that it's going, because they'd have no way to know where the actual drill bit was and what angle it was at and all that stuff that Thomas went through. They needed all that information to be able to make sure they're getting it to go in the right direction. So unfortunately, not from a horizontal drill standpoint. Vertical drill maybe, but we've seen that fail too.
It's really important for the audience to understand here that part of this is, so part of the drilling operation, you see the spoils pile coming out. That's from the water and the liquids. They had 2 specialists on site the entire time that did nothing except mix like the benzonite. They have different chemicals that will do different things, and help us keep the hole open, lubricate it. And so we had 2 specialists there, like engineers, just monitoring the drilling fluids. Wow. Now, the reason why I bring that up is I I actually think you see it in the show. You see the fluid squirting out of the drill bit.
Yep.
One of the problems that we've had, I've seen a lot of comments like, stick a camera up there and look at that. One of the problems that we've had in the past is, if you go back and look at our drilling exercises, we drill under the canal and then we come up and then we go up into the mesa. The first year we got driven down like this. And then the next year, you know, we went down and then we came back up over the hill. Here's the problem. Anytime we go down, we create a belly. So as that fluid is coming out, it acts like a P-trap. And what that prevents us from doing is, once the drilling operation stops, you've got that bentonite clay and stuff that's gone down into that P-trap, and it sets up. And even if it doesn't, to try to get a camera up through there, how would you ever get a camera through that drill mud and have the lens be clear enough to see anything on the backside?
Right.
So this drilling exercise, if you look, we set the drilling rig back behind the canal because we felt like those guys felt like they could get a better angle at what we wanted to accomplish with the mesa.
Yep.
But to do that, we got to go under the canal and then pop up, which creates a belly. So what we did is, you'll notice we dug the spoils pit at the base of the mesa, and you've got the drill bit popping through one end of the pit, and then the bit is exposed for about 5 or 6 feet, and then it pokes back into the mesa. And that was specifically so that we didn't create any kind of a P-trap or a belly. What we're trying to create here is a hole that is gravitationally downhill from top to bottom, so all those fluids run out, and when they dry, we've got a really beautiful hole to put a camera up and be able to see, or other equipment. The reason why this beacon going out is so vital to us is, if we even get, let's say we just get a 10-foot section where that drill bit is starting to head downhill, we just created a pocket that's going to collect that fluid, and we just defeated the whole purpose of the drill.
Yep.
So part of the reasons why we keep pulling it out, putting it in, and trying to get that right pitch is, we can't have any downhill turns in that whole stretch. So when that beacon goes out and goes blind, that's why it's so critical. Is we're like, guys, if we even drill just a short distance and it's heading at a negative pitch, we just defeated the entire purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yep. That makes total sense. I'm glad you explained that, because I saw that pit up there, and I knew it was your spoils pit, or whatever you called it there. And I wondered, why it was up there at the foot of the mesa, at the base of the mesa, rather than back like it was in the first one. So I'm glad you explained that. Thank you. Makes a lot of sense. You're right. That P-trap, and I'm familiar with plumbing, so yeah, you would never you'd be going through all that stuff all the way there. So interesting. So the materials, now that we've talked about that a little bit, and then there was the green gelatin like stuff. There was the red that came out of there. And I thought, and I know Jim Kelgard's out there, and Jim, I'm going to tell you, when I first saw this picture right here, I said, that's a guitar pick. That's a guitar pick. That's a red guitar pick later. I mean, look at the shape of it. Anyway, I know I digress there for a moment, but you had the green gelatin stuff, and then this red stuff, and then you had the wood, what they thought was wood, this stuff here that was in there as well. And when I saw this, I was thinking, oh, there's a mine shaft, or there's a shaft. It may not be a mine shaft for, mining for gold or whatever, but there's some sort of a shaft in there. If it was wet and soppy, that might even account for the green, they call it swamp or algae, or not algae, but it has like plant-based materials that might account for that. But man, I have no idea. I mean, this is such a mystery of what that is. Then they had it analyzed, and it was not wood, but it was that had the spore holes in it, aquatic plants from a wetland deposit. I don't know. That just doesn't, and this was supposed to be like a stem, but he also talked about it being like charcoal, like it was a fire within the mesa. Now that brings up all kinds of speculation about what could cause something like that. A crashed UFO in the mesa would cause all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know, but it's What do you make of that? All of you, Thomas too. You know, I mean, I know you have to be careful what you explain here, but plant-based materials in there, aquatic plants in the Mesa, and it was like 180 feet in.
Thomas's answer is going to be better than our answers.
Yeah.
so
He
he'll
may not be
know.
able to answer.
I'll defer
I
to Thomas.
immediately thought of just when I was doing research on the Uinta Basin, you know, the Gilsonite fires that happened like back in the early 1900s and late 1800s. But that's an ancient, right? But I know that Gilsonite is flammable, like pretty flammable in its dust form or in its like ground form. So I thought the same thing, Jeff. Immediately, it was like, oh, it's maybe it was a Gilsonite mine in there until it came back. The guy came back with the information, and Thomas obviously would know much more than at least. Can you say anything?
Yeah. Did you have anything to say, Mike, before I?
Come on, Mike.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. You know, the only thing I could think of, because obviously a plant's not going to grow inside the Mesa. It would have to have sunlight. So
Correct. Yep.
we know there's flowing water somewhere under the Mesa because, or under the ranch. You guys have dumped a ton of water in early seasons into a hole, even put dye in, tried to find where the dye came out, didn't come
Never
out
found
anywhere. So if there's underwater flow, that could have come in from upstream and lodged into, you know, and you could have bored into some of that underground water flow of some kind. That's the only other thing I could think of as how you get something that was growing and had sunlight at one point buried 180 feet into the Mesa. That's all I got.
Yeah, I was only talking about the burnt thing. I have no idea about the other.
Same for that. Could it have washed in, or did it burn? I mean, the burning thing maybe depends on what the original
right. Was it a
really
structure in
was.
there?
Yeah. What was the material that burned? What does that come back as? That would help to know too. Or carbon dating. How old is it? How long?
Yeah, carbon dating. We were kind of curious about that. All of us that watched Curse of Oak Island, that's the first thing I thought is like, carbon date that stuff.
Carbon date everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what do you think, Thomas?
Well, I think if all we had found was that wood and the goo, the green goo, you know, the Uinta Basin was actually it was a sea, you know, millions of years ago.
That's what
there's actually a scenic byway leaving out of Vernal that goes up towards Flaming Gorge. And as you drive in there, you know, they have little factoids on the side of the road on these signs that, you know, shark teeth have been found here. Alligator teeth are found here.
Oh,
this
wow.
Part of an underwater sea.
That's so cool.
There is. And with our shell rock, it's really cool because you can go out there in the basin, go down, well, a lot of different places, but you go get that shell rock and you break it open and there's all kinds of fossils, seashell fossils, fish fossils.
That's so neat.
So the basin being underwater, you know, we know for a fact that it was at one point, and that there was a sea there. So if we had just found that aquatic plant and the wood, I think in my mind, I probably would have dismissed it as, well, this is a sandstone mesa, right? Sand is just sedimentary. It's just sand that's taken a hard formation. That makes total sense to me that you would find that in the bottom of a seabed. There's some, you know, I hope they show it. I'm not sure. I don't know what made the cut, what haven't. I'm watching these episodes the first time with everybody. There's a little more information that I find fascinating with this. We'll see if it comes out in the next couple episodes or not. I'm happy to come back and discuss it further once we know. But
awesome.
There's more information surrounding this discovery of this stuff that will come out, whether it comes out on the show or whether we reveal it out on the podcast. there's more to the story, but the charred part is the interesting thing to me, because the charred really, that's the part that you say, okay, you had something burning. That's a little harder for me to place the charred part of this into
Me
that
too.
whole equation.
Yep.
You know, and so my mind, listen, my brain, I'm so analytical. My brain is instantly trying to find the solution to all this stuff that's happening. I'm like, oh, well, maybe the bit heated up that wood and that like charred it as it's, but it was in the middle of the, like that burn stuff was in the middle of that goo, right? It wasn't. And with that, we keep track of the heat on the bit. Oh, that's the other, you know, one of the other pieces of data that the beacon picks up too is the temperature of the bit. So we can tell when the bit's getting hot. We can tell what temperature it is. So, and they monitor that. If it starts heating up, they put more fluid through the bit to help cool it down. So I know we didn't burn it in there. As I try to go through, I can't account for the burn part of that. I don't know what could account for that. And I think that's the part that really makes this intriguing to me, because just finding the aquatic plants, I'm like, well, I find fossils all the time out there of aquatic things. Cool. That's not a big deal. But add in the charred part and the fact that you've got this goo, which you know, and maybe some more other information that's out there. It's very fascinating.
Now, did they say, because I don't remember it being said, but the type of wood that was burnt? Like, did you guys find out what specific type of like wood it was? Like what kind of tree it came from?
He didn't give us a specific type, but he did limit it down and say that there was only a few aquatic species that fit that type of profile. So we don't have the specific one, but we do have it down to a pretty tight group of plants that it would be.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, very much so.
I almost seem to remember on the show, he said there's like only 12 or like there, I think he said a number. There's only a certain number of plants that this could be, but it's limited. So we've at least got it narrowed down.
Then we need to get the list and do the studying.
Yes, you do. That's your homework assignment for next week.
I like that nerdy stuff. Give me that plant list.
All right. Yeah. So my theory was that, and we're going to talk about this as well, is that hole in the tree. So, you know, for whatever reason, this UFO was crashing, went through, part of it went through the tree, it hit the ground, and it dragged plant material and stuff with it as it went into the mesa, crashed into the mesa, and then it collapsed on top of it. And that's why you've got the plant material in there, because it dragged it in there with it, and it was hot. So that's why it burned some of the stuff. And that's why you got the hole in the tree. There you go. So solved right there.
Mystery solved.
If only, right? So really interesting, and we're really hopeful. And again, here we are, we're on episode number 11, and we are so hopeful that you are going to be able to continue, because we don't know yet, that you will eventually. This is still just the first of the 2 boreholes that are supposed to go up under the mesa and then pop out in the top. And we can't even get the first one done. And I mentioned about the frustration that was all on everyone's faces every time you get on the radio and go, guys, I got bad news. And they're like, oh, geez, are they ever going to get this thing drilled? So we're hopeful that this will get drilled and we can get some electronics in there so that they can do their wizardry and get a little bit better look at what's in there. So hopefully more to come on that in the future episodes here. I think I saw on the preview for next week, or one of the shows, it was one of the previews where it looked like the drill bit was actually popping out somewhere, and Erik was looking at it or something. And so I don't know, it was a quick glimpse and I went, oh, was that the drill bit popping out? Maybe they actually finally get one done. So we shall see. But very interesting. And thank you for all of that, Thomas. That really helps out a lot, giving us that information. Let's go to the hole in the tree real quick while we're there. You had noticed that years ago. You know, then there was that picture that they had shared with us, and I think I've got a shot of that right here. You know, and when you're looking on the ground, looking up to the tree, you can't really tell that there's a hole. But when you look at it like this, that is a significant hole in a tree. Now, do trees grow funky like that sometimes? Yes, they do. But that is an anomaly, in my opinion. I'm not an arborist, but that's pretty significant. Um, and then you had the gentleman come out, and I've got his name here. Oh, Chris Porritt,
Yep.
retired sheriff, come out and talk. And initially, and he was on a couple of years ago and came out and explained some different things to you guys back then as well. When he started talking about all of the stuff, he talked initially about the cow that had been had the bones removed from the shoulders forward, and the skin was just an empty sack. That was disturbing. And again, you go through your mind what would cause something like that. But then he talked about the material that was, from some sort of a crash. And then they talked about crinkling it up and it flaying back out. I have to admit, when he was going through that, I was very skeptical. I mean, my immediate thought was, oh, is he, how sincere is he in all of this? But then he mentioned the green stuff, the green goo. And I was like, okay, that just threw me for a loop. Guys, what's your thoughts on all of that? I mean, and including Thomas. I mean, that obviously you spotted that hole in a tree years ago, and it's still, to this day, it still looks like a hole in a tree in modern nowadays. So, well, let's go back to Chris Porritt real quick and what he was explaining. Let's talk about that for just a moment. What was your take on all of that, you guys?
I'll let Mike go first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like with anything, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yes.
I mean, it's a great story, but without the evidence, it happened a long time ago. It ties to the way the tree looks. It tied to the damage done to the tree. The arborist said that looked like the kind of damage that would have taken about 30 years, happened about 30 years ago. So from that standpoint, it all lines up okay. But without more information than just past history or a story to tell us, I don't know what else to make of it. I guess you could kind of dig around and look in the ground there where it may have crashed, see if there's any debris, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, when I can understand, Jeff, what you're saying. Same thing with you, Mike. I think when he showed up, I immediately thought to myself that there had to be more, like something was going to have to come back around to justify what he was saying. Otherwise, I didn't think it would make it into the show. I know that they tend to be really careful about what they're showing and making sure that it's not going to come back to be like, oh, this person was making stuff up. So I listened very carefully. And of course, I'm sure like everybody else immediately thought of like Roswell and the material that was described, or what you often hear described when you're talking about like UFO material. I did think it was funny though that he was like, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just going to share it.
Yeah.
I thought that was great because that was one of the things that people are like, well, the Myers never said anything about it. And he was just like, I said I wasn't going to share it, but now I am. And we were all like, yes, sir. Thank you. So it was, I mean, I'm not going to say interesting because Michelle called me out on that. Apparently I'm using that word a lot tonight. But it was crazy. It was crazy it's a fantastical story. And that's what I would think if I hadn't heard it under a different circumstance, like if it hadn't been presented on the show. And then, yeah, you guys backed it right up with that green gel from the Mesa. So how close in timing was that shot?
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Did it happen organically where these were two totally just independent things that happened, or?
So this is where I have to be careful because I don't know how look, I think we've been all open about the fact that we don't give the show any fake material to work with, right? We're not there to fabricate.
Correct.
However, I think it's also known that we're out there filming for months, and then that gets condensed down to 10 or 14 episodes. And so the one thing about the show is it's not always chronological. Let's just I'm trying to think how to do this. Let's just theorize, if we would, that we have a person that tells us a story, and the story is really hard to believe because it's so incredible. So we do our due diligence, we document it, we investigate it, we look into it, we follow all the leads we possibly can on it, and we put it, we're not quite sure what to do with it, and it sits right here. And then let's say that a little ways down the road, all of a sudden we make a discovery that may lend credibility to what's told to us earlier.
Oh, that makes sense.
Theoretically, then you would say, well, maybe we need to revisit that a little bit and look at that, because it would be I'm trying to be
that's
dance around this fire as I can.
I'm sorry.
That makes total sense, though. That's what any investigator would do, is if they took notes on something and then there was evidence to back up a story, then they would revisit it. That's what I would think anybody would do.
Like, look, if I told you, if I come on and I tell them a story about, I tell them this incredible story that's hard for them to believe, and they're laughing at me. Not saying that we laughed at Chris. So Chris, I have to say, here's the thing about Chris. Chris was able to provide us with a lot of details on the spot. I think I look to people when they're making or fabricating things up and you're trying to poke holes in their story. And look, I think maybe one of my favorite lines on this entire series from season 1 till now is when they actually played me saying, if Chris had told me this 5 years ago, I'd laughed him off the ranch. That's absolutely true. Okay. You tell me that a spaceship with aliens and green jelly crash and I mean, come on now, really? And I'll tell you right now that a lot that got edited out of that whole scene with Chris was we didn't go easy on Chris. We didn't treat him with kid gloves. He's making some very incredible claims there that he actually witnessed sight. So you better believe that the way I approach this is I'm going to start poking his story and see if I find holes in it. I'm going to try to trip him up. I'm going to try to see if I can find a way to get him, because what I'm looking for is credibility here. It's all I've got to go on. And the other guys are the same way, but just my mind, I'm like, if you're full of crap, I'm going to start cross-examining you every way I can possibly think and see if I can trip you up. And to Chris's credit, we drilled him. We were out there for a long time with Chris. And if anything, I will say I'm a little ashamed at maybe the way I came across, because my skeptical mind, I could have come across a little bit sarcastic or cavalier, maybe not giving him due respect that he deserved, because in my mind, I'm like, come on now, UFO crash. And so we drilled Chris, and here's what I found is that people that are making that stuff up, you catch them and they got to think about it for a second. Their eyes are looking up to the corner, as they're trying to there's subtle body language things you can watch for. I didn't get any of that with Chris. He was very quick with his answers. He never, I could never catch him in, when you're trying to lie and you're covering your lies, and you got to remember, he never, I'm sorry. He was consistent. He never changed his story. Right.
Yep.
And I have to say that even though we left filming that day, and I'm like, oh, come on now. In my mind, I'm still thinking he was convincing enough in the fact that he never wavered. He never contradicted himself. He had a quick like answer, and he'd give you the answer and you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense, you know. So I found Chris, as incredible as his story was, I couldn't find any way to discredit him, even though I tried. And I know the other guys were drilling him too. I was there to try to poke holes in it and find fault with his story. And to his credit, he held firm. And so I left there going from this is absolutely ridiculous to a part of my brain saying, yeah, but you know, what if? And then you start adding it in with the other stuff. So here's what we do know, we've now got this from several different accounts that when the Shermans bought the ranch from the Myers, they were told, don't dig. Well, why? Why would you give that instruction? Could it be that maybe he'd buried something, and he even gave specific coordinate or a specific area to them that said, don't dig in this area? Well, what if he had buried something there and he's like, look, I don't want you digging up something that's going to cause problems for you down the road. As you start putting some of these other pieces of the story that we've been told, that scenario there that Chris told us could explain a lot. It could be the answer to a lot of those. It actually makes sense to a lot of them. And so it makes me wonder now, like, is there something out on the ranch that's buried there that we haven't discovered yet? You know, and you have to ask yourself, what if he's telling the truth? And to Chris's credit, I couldn't trip him up and get him to contradict himself.
Interesting. That's good information too, because, you know, like I said, I was very skeptical when he was started that, you know, and then especially, you know, like Shannon mentioned, we've heard the story about the metal with memory in it. You crinkle it all up and lay it out and it just folds back the way it was to begin with. You know, we've heard that story before from Roswell and everything. So I was thinking, you know, how good is this? But he did seem, you know, and again, I wasn't there with him for as long as you were. I was just watching him on TV. He did seem like he was very confident in what he was telling. So I did walk away with that, you know, at the end of it. So, but, you know, in the cattle mutilations, I mean, you know, Mike and I and Shannon, we've talked about that, you know, as long as we've been talking about this program, that the docuseries that you guys are doing there. And the cattle mutilations are just simply an anomaly that I can't wrap my brain around. Who would be responsible for doing something like that with the no blood and the surgical cuts and the, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And with the way he described it as, you know, everything from the shoulders up missing and it just being an empty sack of the skin, that's incredible. And with the no blood and everything else. So I don't know. But then that tree, you know, with the hole in it, and then I have one more picture I wanted to show of that tree, and it's this one here. It shows John up there, and you see how this one branch right here does look like something happened to it, and it created it to grow in a different direction. I don't know what this tree is. If that's almost looks like a locust tree, but you know, why cottonwood is it? Okay, oh, that's why we get all that. Look like snow in the springtime, but.
Yeah, that's what we see on the cameras.
yeah. But you know, this portion right here that definitely deviates and grows off in a different direction, you know. And he said happened probably about 30 years ago, and everybody's like, ding, ding, ding. There's another one that, you know, kind of rang with what Chris said. So again, interesting information. And it's one of those things, like you mentioned, Thomas, that, you know, you have to look into each of these things. You have to, because there might be parts of it that are absolutely play into what you're trying to discover here. So you have to look into them, as far-fetched as they may seem on the surface. But yeah. So any last thoughts on the gel? I mean, the fact that when Dragon picked that up. Now they said it in episode last night. Erik was telling him, "You shouldn't have picked that up." And he said, "Well, I did. I picked it up." And I say, "It's in his hand. You don't know what that is.
It's too late now. It's already there."
You're the safety guy and security and safety, and you're holding this in your bare hands. Yeah, probably not.
To be fair, They were picking up the little metal pieces in their
Yes.
bare hands too. I doubt that he
Yep.
thought he was going to pick up gel until it was already in his hand. But
Yep.
still,
Wow.
yeah, I think everybody was screaming at their
We
television.
do
like,
have
oh
the
my
handheld.
God.
You do have the what?
So-
Yeah, we do have the handheld Geiger counter that will
Ah,
sweep across there. And a lot of times you don't see that part in there, but we
Right.
do. We almost always have that handheld Geiger counter, and actually we'll typically on these experiments we'll have 3 or 4 handheld ones that are in our pockets, and so we do sweep for at least radioactive stuff before we go
That's good.
picking it up. I mean, it could be biological and get some
Sure.
weird rash or disease, but we're in the moment. I have to admit, we're not really thinking about that. It's not till
Yeah, I
later when
know.
you're like, boy, that
I know,
maybe
yeah.
we should have done.
Yeah. You see it soak into his skin, and then all of a sudden he starts
know.
acting weird and wanders off somewhere. It's like, somebody go find Bryant. He's not with us here at the moment. Oh my goodness. Well, it's definitely we are very glad that you guys are doing all of this and as brave as you are with these things. And Thomas is frozen. Are you still there, Thomas?
Oh, here I am.
There he
Yeah.
is.
Okay. You were frozen there for a minute. Good. I'm
Guys
glad you're still there.
disappeared for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're very glad that you guys are doing this, and this docu-series that you're going through right now is fascinating, by the way. And I know that at some point you're going to get to the point you're going to be able to actually be able to detect whatever it is. You're going to be able to detect it, and then that's going to change everything for the world to come down the road. But so we had the drilling going on and all of that, and then the things that you found in the Mesa. And yet to come, more to come on all of that as we go on. There was little pieces of metal, like Shannon just mentioned. There was little pieces of metal, but the ones that you found the previous 2 seasons ago with a hot shot drilling, I think it was hot shot, where you actually had those little pieces of metal, those larger pieces that had the europium and whatnot in it, tellurium. Again, that brings a lot of question into what in the heck is possibly in there that could come up and have that kind of material come out of the Mesa. Now, those guys a couple of years ago, they got further into the Mesa, right? They were able to drill further than what we've seen so far, about 180 feet. They were able to exceed that, weren't they?
Sure. I want to say the first year, the year that we found the metal, I want to say we got back there like 330 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the following year, we didn't get in as far, but that one we went up the hill and came up on the top and hit that hard spot. John's saying 420 feet. So
yeah,
but yeah, so it's a little bit deceiving because a lot of that, especially the second year, was climbing up, and so you're climbing a 45-degree angle. You're 17 inches to every 12 inches. So you add a distance on really fast when you're going at an angle.
Yep, absolutely.
But not necessarily like depth into the Mesa.
Correct. Yep. And then you had the guy, I forgot, Joe was his name, that was up on top of the Mesa, and you guys carried that equipment all the way up that rock face. That had to be excruciating to get that all up there. And then he drilled. How far down did he get when he was drilling downward? I don't know if we ever got a total.
I don't remember. I want to say it was like 16 feet. It was so piddly. It was, I mean, oh my gosh. First of all, hauling all that equipment up there was a nightmare because we went right up. The easiest place to go was right there, and yet it's like the hardest place on the Mesa. And we not only had to pack the drill, but then we had to have the pump because you got to have the water that's flowing down through there. So we had to bring up a trash pump. We had to pack up a big tank and then we had a tanker down at the bottom that was pumping the water up into the tank and then into the drill. It was an operation and a half, and take it for what it's worth. The drilling company that we I don't know if we bought it from or leased it. I'm not sure what the arrangement was on that drill, but they apparently use these drills like over in Africa and a lot of like remote regions. It's hard to get equipment into. They use this exact drill there. We asked. I remember asking the guys. I'm like, so how far down will this go? And they're like, oh, we drill 50, 100 feet down all the time with these things, no problem. I think what we my brother came and helped us for a little while. He was up because it's kind of a 2-man job up there. So he's not on camera, but he was up there with Joe, and they were working that together. And there was points of time when they're both like the drill's just not going down, and they're both, you got a guy on each side like trying to pull that drill, plus the weight of the drill itself, which is supposed to be enough to bring it down. And I don't remember the depth. It wasn't significant. It was kind of pathetic at the end of the day, how little we were able to drill vertical.
That poor guy was up there all summer. I mean,
He's up there a long time. Yeah, it's.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we were joking that he's still up there, still working at it. But I think it burned the motor up on that thing or something, and the engine on that, and that was it for that. And it seized right up. We were done.
Yep, it was done.
Yeah. Wow.
At this point, I'm not convinced. All these people that are like, why don't you just blow up the Mesa?
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh, I hate
at this
that.
point, I'm not convinced anyone would be able to.
Yeah, I know, right?
I think that is a hilarious proposition that people make, that it's just like, oh yeah, just blow it up. Yeah, okay. Let's see if that even doesn't. I imagine it just being like, it just fizzling out, or just like doing one of those little flashbangs, and then the Mesa's still untouched.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like at this point.
Well,
Yeah.
I see that. And look, I completely, like, I'm with these guys. I'm impatient. I'd love to know what's in there. And I can promise, the viewers, we're not intentionally trying to milk this out. This isn't a scripted where it's like, okay, in season 3, we're going to discover this. And then in season 7, we'll finally do this. And season 11. And you know what? By the time we get to 18, then no. We would love to, honestly, we'd love to know what's in there, because it could hold a key piece to the other things we're looking for. Or maybe we get in there and it's a whole big nothing.
Right.
But at least we cross it off the list and we quit spending. It's expensive to drill.
Yeah.
So we're putting a large amount of our resources towards this. It'd be nice if it's a whole bunch of nothing. It'd be nice to hurry and get to the bottom of that, so we could put that money to other uses and refocus our efforts. So we're not trying to drag this out, but and so I sympathize with them in the fact that it's like, yeah, let's hurry and blow this thing up, see what's there. But can you imagine, archaeologists getting frustrated with how tedious the archaeology is going on their dig and saying, let's just blow it up.
Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right.
Everything that it is you're trying to study. And furthermore, let's just go with the exotic explanation and say that there's a crashed spacecraft in there. Let's say this crashed spacecraft has nuclear rods that it runs off of. We go blowing it up, and we send radioactive material out into the air. Or let's say there's a biological part of this, and we release some deadly disease. I mean, if it's a crashed spacecraft, who's to say that those aliens driving the thing didn't die from some horrible anthrax attack?
Yeah.
Like, the point is that we don't know what it is we're dealing with, and to go in there and use explosives or any blunt force type of activity that's more invasive than what we're doing right now would be reckless and irresponsible, and could be dangerous, and it also could destroy the very nature of what it is we're trying to study. So while I sympathize with them and I get impatient too, and I'm like, just blow the damn thing up, it's a horrible idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that entirely.
Yep.
We've talked about that a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And plus the environmental impact and everything else to that. But so we were thinking that not far from where you are, there's a company called Rock Equipment Company. Now, how you will get the oscillator and those caissons up there on top of the Mesa, I have no idea. But they do a lot of work, or have done a lot of work in the past on Oak Island. They put those 10-foot round caissons into the ground with that oscillator. that would get you in there. But boy, I don't know. That's hopefully. But now that you've started this, now that you've done all the GPR and everything else to realize that there is definitely an anomaly in the Mesa, you have to pursue this now forever, however long it takes. You have to pursue it, and now to find out, what is it? If is it anything at all? Like you said, you may get in there and find that it's nothing, but there's something in there. There's definitely something in there deflecting the drill, causing the beacon to stop working, and the GPR anomalies and all of that that's been picked up. There's definitely something in there.
And the metal we pulled out.
And the metal you've pulled out. Yeah. So I mean, you have to pursue this now. It's inevitable that it's going to have to be completed. It might be episode or season 18, but you have to.
Boy, I hope not. I really hope not. I mean,
we do too.
It's wild to think that the Mesa is just like one part of this, though. Like the Mesa by itself has so much going on, and then you add everything else to it, like the Triangle or Homestead 2. It is. You guys have a lot going on, so I could see where you'd be like, I'd like to be done figuring out what's in there, so we can, even if it's nothing, move on to focusing on the stuff that's happening at the Triangle, and like in the episode that aired last night with the drones and all the stuff. Like you guys have more than just the Mesa happening. It's a lot.
The Eastfield Canyon and all of that. There's so much going on out there that it's incredible. And that's where we're headed next. With the episode last night, we had Preston and Tyler come out from Sky Elements, and they brought 1,000 drones with them this time to come out there. And they had, I mean, look at the crew of people. I mean, that's more.
It's a party.
Yeah,
that's more people than I've ever seen on the ranch at one time. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, they brought a lot of people, and they brought a lot of drones with them. And then all of the equipment that was set up. Travis went down that list of equipment: the FLIR, the GPS, the high-speed cameras, the regular cameras that are out there, the spectrum analyzer, all these different things that were looking at this area while the experiment was going on with the drones. Was incredible. There's so much happening out there at the same time, which and I applaud. You guys have applied so much in the form of technology into this to try to figure this thing out. It's amazing. When we look back at season 1 to see where you are now and the things you're applying to this now. And that's why I stand on, up and say that it's at some point you're going to be able to, we know there's something there. Something is on the ranch or there about the ranch, and it is affecting so many different things. You guys are on the verge of being able to detect it, find out what it is, and then be able to detect it. Because I think, as we've talked about before, it's not just on the ranch. There's other places around the world where this high strangeness is happening. But you guys are doing the study here. So this is where you're going to come up with some answers at some point. So I applaud what you're doing there. But these drones, I mean, how impressive was that for you, Thomas, to be there and see these guys show up with 1,000 drones for this part?
Oh, it's an awesome sight. And to watch them lay out these drones, they've got their tape measures out there. They're placing them all precisely at the right distances. I'll give you a little behind the scenes with the drone guys. Something that we encountered last year repeatedly. It was incredible. And it won't, I could share it because I know it won't show on television because we didn't film it. But you look at that line of vehicles there with those people. I don't know if you still got that handy. Pull it up.
Oh, well, I have the one with all the people walking out. Yeah.
So in there, I don't know if it's that vehicle at the back. I actually think it's one up there. It's just like the second one up. But the vehicle, they had a vehicle there with, and it had I had the computers for the, their main equipment that you see on the table there, all the computers and all that. So they can go ahead and lay the drones out, but then they have those base stations that they set up, and all that runs back to their computers, and then their computer is the brain of the operation. Well, interestingly enough, that vehicle, they get out, and the vehicle locks the keys in the car. And of course, we're on timeline, and they're like, what the heck? It was strange. We're like, what's going on here? Well, they swore up and down that, you know, it shouldn't have done that, whatever. We ended up having to, you know, improvise and break into the vehicle to get that. I only bring that up because that was the first delay that day. And the thing that made that strange is last summer, I can think of 4 different vehicles that when they got down in the triangle, they automatically locked their doors.
Oh my gosh.
We were filming a scene. Again, I'm pretty sure this is not going to play. I'm positive it won't, because we were just checking. Omnitech was doing some checks on their boxes and stuff. And we pull up there, right there in the triangle. They get out of the car, and their car's still running. They shut the door. We walk over the box, and all of a sudden we hear the click, and all the doors lock.
Oh, no.
So that happened over and over and over and over again in the triangle. My own vehicle did that, and I tell you, like, I don't drive my nice vehicles to the ranch anymore. It sounds crazy, but like, and my wife doesn't like me driving our nice vehicles to the ranch anymore because bad things happen to my new vehicles when I drive. I bought a new truck and I drive it out the ranch and immediately starts having mechanical problems. And when you take it to the mechanic and they're like, what the heck did you do this? I'm like, well, why? Is it messed up? And they're like, we've never seen this before. Like, you know, are you out? And Jim Morse rolling his UTV or his SUV across the ranch and having all the lights blow out. He's recounted that story publicly as well.
Oh my gosh.
I was with him when that happened. Like, only the halogen bulbs, none of the LEDs, but every halogen bulb on the car blew. And I went with him to the dealer to drop the vehicle off, and the dealer, we thought maybe a fuse or something, but it was every halogen light, interior, exterior, blew as he's driving across the ranch. So anyways, back to the drone. I didn't want to, but you know, these are the interesting things that are going on behind the scenes that people don't get to see. So the main vehicle that's got the main equipment in it, the only one out of all of them, it locks the doors, locked out. So there's the first delay. So we have to find a way to break into this vehicle and get that stuff out. We get broke into, they start setting it up, and it is an awesome sight. To answer your question, like to see these 1,000 drones stacked out on the tables and their methodology they have. I mean, watching these guys work, it's like clockwork. They all have their specific job. They're all being like, it's amazing.
Yeah. And then, you know, like you said there to, you know, the different equipment, that's fascinating. I'm glad you shared that story, because that's something I would, you know, we would never have known otherwise. But for the vehicles to lock, and then Jim's halogen bulbs to blow like that. I mean, you know, Thomas, you mentioned, I got to go there real quick, because you mentioned one time, I think it was on either these shows are running together on me because I watched them both back to back, but you had mentioned in one of them about something, an intelligence on the ranch messing with things or preventing things or whatever, an intelligence. Do you still feel that way, that there's some sort of, I mean,
more than
it
ever.
almost seems like that
More than ever, he says more than ever.
The longer someone's on the ranch, I think the more firm that belief system becomes in them. And that's scientists, that's skeptical people. That's like, the longer you're there, the more you witness these targeted things. It's not always what happens, it's the timing of it, and it's the specific nature of it that makes it, as you know, again, once can be a coincidence, twice can be a coincidence, 3, I guess that could be a coincidence. When you get up to 100 times, you look like an idiot trying to explain it away as a coincidence, because the statistical odds of having 100 coincidences all like that are so astronomical that no rational person would accept that explanation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it really, and when you talk about the vehicle locking, not any of the ones that really didn't, it just brought people out. The one that had the main bulk of the equipment in it locked the door so they couldn't get into it. Why that one?
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
That kind of makes it, when you get that kind of backstory to it, it starts to ring more like, or sound more like, the night of the telescope experiment,
Oh,
where
that
it
was
seemed
crazy.
like there was so much intent behind the
Mhm.
failures, so that you couldn't look at the anomaly up in the sky. Everything you guys tried to try and get stuff to work. Um, to me, that, and just like with the drill, the signal dying, I could write that off. We know there's metal in the Mesa. You've had that come out, so there could be more metal in there. That could be, but in this last episode, the signal died much closer to the drill than it did before. It never even made it close to where it was
Mm-mm.
previously, and it died again, almost like it's just trying to prevent you from doing whatever it is you want to do. The intent behind that starts to, like you said, the totality of circumstances. Caleb was talking about that last time. You add that all
Yeah.
together, the statistical possibility of all that happening is just astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it gets better. So when you watch the show, uh, look a little closer at some of the visual cues that you're being given. And for example, look at the lighting when we get there and when we start setting it up. So we get there, it's late afternoon. Okay, sun's up in the sky. You can tell by the lighting that it's afternoon, and you can watch the shadows where they're at, and that gives you a good idea of where we're at in the daylight. Okay, we get these drones set up, and they're running through the system. Of course, we're not going to do the drone show until nightfall, and so the way that the filming, we at some point we have to take lunch, and so lunch is a certain number of hours into our day, and so we have this structure to where they show up, we set up the first part of the day, and then we go do our lunch, and then we come back and we jump into the experiment, and we have a good 6-7 hours to get into the experiment. And in this case, the experiment's scheduled to start when it's dark, so we can see the lights and we have a better idea of what's going on. Well, they get the drone set up. I'm over there sitting at the table. I have a pretty lengthy video on this, where I've got my cell phone. He's got all 1,000 drones out there, and I wanna. They didn't really dive into this very much, but Sky Elements was here the year before.
Mm-hmm.
We saw rapid battery depletion, and we saw the same connectivity issues. So Sky Elements, in the time between that first visit and when they came out, they made all kinds of upgrades. They don't really dive into that aspect of it very much, but they brought better batteries. They actually brought a better system, redundant system of connecting to the drones to help overcome the issues that they had witnessed the first time. So what you're witnessing out there is the most robust system. They don't have to do that at the other drone shows they go to, but because of the issues they had the previous year, they came ready to counteract all of the obstacles we faced the first year. So we learned, to Sky Elements' credit, they learned from their mistakes. It wasn't even their mistake. Let's be clear.
Yeah. The failure.
They learned from the incidents that took place.
There you go.
It was not their mistake. They are professionals in every sense of the word. They learned from those things, and they did everything they could to counteract that. So they get it set up. We got better batteries, more base stations. They even added different software components to this to make it more robust and more redundant. And we got all the drones laid out there. It's still daylight, and I'm sitting there at the table and I'm making a video of this. They've got all 1,000 drones connected to their system. Everything is behaving perfectly. We come back, and we come back from lunch. We're now ready to start diving into it. They're checking the systems, And again, I've got another video of me videoing the screen of their computer. All 1,000 drones are connected. Everything, they upload the flight path to each drone. Each drone has accepted that flight path. Everything is ready to go. It's all perfect. I've got this on my camera, on my phone. I'm just, I'm sitting there holding that up, video on the screen. We're talking about, so they had it before we left. They have it when we come back. We're talking, these things have had solid connectivity now for a long hours. And now we get ready to go do the experiment. And here's again, it's not what happened, it's when. Yep. We say, all right, guys, it's go time. And I mean, we've got this on the network cameras for sure. We say, let's go. And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. And the drones just start dropping from their connectivity. And then they won't, and when he finally gets them connected, they're saying they don't have the flight thing downloaded, like everything that could go wrong. And I have the video of it working perfectly. They had it. It wasn't until we said, all right, it's go time. We launched the rocket. People make fun of all the rockets we launched. We launched the rocket. We say it's go. And all of a sudden, all the drones, and we fought for it. I can't tell my family what's going on the ranch. I'm under an NDA, but I do give them little hints every now and again, like, hey, if you guys drive down, there's some public roads down there on the south. And so I'll tell them, if you drive down there around 10 p.m., just watch the sky. You'll see something cool. So my family's down in the car down there sitting, and it's late and it's a school night, if I remember right. And they're waiting, and I'm getting texts. They're like, when's it going to happen? And I'm like, we're dealing with technical difficulties. Just stay tuned.
Of course.
And finally, my family gave up. And they're like, the kids got, my wife's like, kids got school tomorrow. We got to go. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, it was supposed to happen hours ago. We're having problems. And what you see is we finally get 200 of them. Well, about 196 of them to take off and do it. There's supposed to be, we were supposed to get all 1,000, but we only ended up getting 196 out of 1,000. And it happened after that was so many hours of delay. Wow. My family is down there thinking they're going to get to see something. They don't know what, but they think they're going to see something down there in the sky. And finally they gave up and left. And we got that flight up and off in the nick of time. So that was a night that was just like full of complete chaos, and it didn't start until we said go.
Yep. Now, take us through that back to the beginning of that timeline. Was it, did the rocket launch and then immediately it was go time right after the first rocket went up? The rocket went up, and in the show, the rocket took off, and then he said, okay, let's go. And that's when they couldn't get the blink command to be in all of them at the same time.
I can't give you a good answer on that because the details are a little fuzzy. And if I gave you an answer, it would be me going off of a fuzzy memory. Yeah. To what I remember, I think that's actually pretty close. Like, we started it off with that rocket launch. Now, I'd have to go back and watch like the raw footage of all of that to remember for sure. But let's put it this way. When I was watching it, there was nothing in that sequence that showed on TV that raised any red flags. Like, oh, they totally misconstrued that.
Right. Yeah. Well, because I was thinking, because always, and like you said earlier, everybody said, wow, why they're always launching rockets. Well, that kicks the hornet's nest. It seems to have an effect. Keep doing it. If it happens repeatable, then keep doing it. So in this case, though, I'm thinking maybe you don't want to fire that rocket first. Let's do the drones, because that's what I was thinking last night when I'm watching it. The rocket goes up, and then all of a sudden now you're having problems with all the drones. And I'm like, maybe they shouldn't have fired that rocket first. Or, we've talked about the fact that it seems like you guys are being surveilled. There's just too many episodes like the one where your voices are coming back to you. That was freaky beyond freaky. But you know, you guys are definitely being surveilled in some aspect, maybe by if there is an entity there or whatever. So change up what you're doing. You know, in this particular case, we want the drones to work. So let's not fire the rocket until later or something. I don't know. Because it just seemed like that was the timeline. Fire the rocket, and then all the problems started.
You
And
should have just pretended it was a drone show for like a birthday party
yes,
and
yes,
tried to
yeah.
take it that way.
And that's the
It's a
thing with
good
these guys.
observation, and it's worth trying.
But that's the thing with these guys is they are so professional, and I've watched them on YouTube. I've seen some of their shows. I've never seen them live before, but I've seen them, and they are amazing what they do. These things are amazing. Mario walking across the sky. I mean, it's just crazy what these things do. Or the eagle that we just saw over the 4th. And yet this happens here. Only here. It doesn't happen anywhere else. You get all these failures. The blink command is what it started with, and that's this here. I grabbed that shot there of the blink command going, they should all be blinking simultaneously, and they're not. Again, there's another shot of it. And then
Well,
the one
where, you
Go
know,
ahead.
that right there, the comment that Eric and I were saying together was, what you have right there is a visual representation of what Eric would like to do at the light garden. I mean,
That's exactly what I thought of when I saw this. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this looks like his light garden idea.
well, and what are we seeing? That they showed me, like, when they push that button, that should be simultaneous. I mean, at the very least, there just be a millisecond delay, maybe ripple through there, but they should be instant. And so when you're seeing that delayed pattern right there, it really does. It really makes you think, if Eric had his light garden like that, what would we see? I mean, what would it show?
Yep. I hope he gets that, because he did when he came on with us. He did explain the light garden, and he showed us the video that he had somebody made up, or he did, or was made, and that is
Yeah, I think he had
amazing.
made it.
Yeah, it's
Pretty amazing.
Watching him
amazing.
like blender. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Oh my
was
gosh.
very, very cool.
I want him to get that implemented on the ranch, because that was so cool. But yeah, you're right. That would have been a very good representation. Then, of course, the 1.6 gigahertz goes off. You got and you're picking it up on 4 different. You got 1.598, 98.4, 599. You got them all going off all over the place and in different directions. Some are directly up, and some are pointing toward the Mesa. I mean, it was like I know this was over several hours because you just explained that, but it was like it just seemed like hell was breaking loose.
Well,
time
the chaos ensued in a relatively, we fought with issues the whole night, but a lot of the chaos you see on television there, that really did happen. Like bam, 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 like that. It was pretty accurate as far as the way that was being portrayed. And each one of those screens that you see on the screen Travis is looking at, each one of those has an individual antenna. We have an omnidirectional antenna that's picking it up from all directions just to show us if there's a signal. Then we have a horizontal and a vertical that helps us really aim in where that's at. And then we have another omnidirectional, but it's like 180, right? So it's just general direction. It's not a pinpoint. So each one of those screens is an individual antenna.
Yep. And then you also have the Kraken. So that's pretty cool. And he explained that to us too when Erik was on, and the Kraken and how that works. Very detailed on that, and that's amazing as well. But finally, you got the 200 drones up in here. Well, 196 of them. He said 4 of them stayed on the ground, and you could see the holes in the pattern. But you got those up there, and were they just going straight up and just hanging in midair, or were they actually moving?
So they put them up in the air, and then the line, because we're set up to the south of the triangle. If you look at the aerial footage in the show, you'll see we've got a big area mowed down there directly to the south. That's where we're setting up those 1,000 drones. It takes a lot of real estate to put out 1,000 drones. They lift off from there. They create the formation basically directly above us there in the south. And then together they move slowly north towards the Mesa. And then I believe that one too. They even had them go side to side a little bit when they get down there directly over the center, and then they move back in line. And then once they get above us, then they break formation and come back down and land in their original spot.
About how long were they up?
I think that was programmed for an 8-minute flight.
Yeah. And then you can see just from this picture here that they're not holding a very good
No.
position. They're kind of bobbling around and everything, which is kind of what you were hoping for, to see some sort of a pattern when they got over the triangle. But and again, we've talked about how they work off GPS, and so they need to know their position exactly. And we've seen GPS get messed with so much at the ranch. It's almost like you can't even rely on you can rely on it not to work, very, very consistently. So, and then you had the guy, and I couldn't remember what this was called. He said I couldn't catch it. Is FTV or FPV?
FPV,
The
first person
FPV?
view.
Okay, yeah. So that
With the goggles.
particular drone, and it was this Caleb was running it and looking through the VR headset. That's so cool. I've never watched the drone racing that these guys get into with that. I'm gonna have to check that out someday. But that thing was
Yeah,
fast.
very cool.
Yeah, and buzzing around, and this is the point of view that he was seeing as he was flying in and out of the pattern there, and then it hit something, and we heard it,
Something hit it.
or something hit it. Very good point, thank you. And down it came. I mean, we heard it, we saw it, zip, and then down it came and crashed. And what was your take on that, Thomas? I mean,
Well, Caleb and I, not Caleb from Sky Elements, but our Caleb Bench, and I were busy about this as we were watching the episode. We both remember, so we do the review scene after we're reviewing the footage. Like, you hear a thump, like you hear the camera, or you hear the drone hit something. By all accounts, like we've in at length, some of these review scenes are hours and hours long, because what we were trying to figure out was, did it hit the, we got to rule out it hitting the power line, we got to rule out it hitting the Mesa, based on we have to go back and try to figure out from the lights that you see from the point of view from the drone exactly where it was at when it hits. And all the data we have says it wasn't close to the Mesa. So I mean,
and yet that's where it ended up, on the Mesa.
Could it have hit a bat? Maybe, I don't know, but I would think that if it had hit a bat, because see that little GoPro camera is mounted on the front of it. And when you're watching, I never saw anything that would indicate something flew in front of it, because you don't lose sight of the drone light, the other drones that are up. You don't lose sight of those red lights. It's not like some object flew in front of it and blacked those out. I don't know. I mean, to this day, we're all baffled. We don't know what that drone hit, but matter of fact, you could see it spiraling down from the lights. You could see it as it spirals down before it finally hits the rocks. So we were above the Mesa. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it hit.
One of the missing medicine balls that got dropped out of the helicopter.
Yeah. The one that went through the portal and ended up in Ireland somewhere in somebody's backyard, or on another planet or something. But that's incredible. So yeah, that thing, and that couldn't be that cheap. I mean, those things got to be expensive.
Yes,
crash and they come down like that.
Very. It took some extensive searching too, because where we thought we heard it crash, it was not there, and it took some extensive searching to find that thing.
And then in the review, then Erik found the UAPs, the footage of the UAPs, and those were taken with a high-speed camera, if I remember correctly. There was one on the infrared, I think, on the FLIR review, but there was the high-speed cameras, and it was picking up multiple UAPs following in a line and it seemed like it was heading. They were all kind of coming downward at an angle. I don't know if they were heading toward the Mesa. I don't know if that was explained. Do you guys recall whether or not that was explained where they were coming down towards the Mesa, or they weren't sure of the distance, maybe? But
I can't remember because there's so much. Again, we know. I think those ones came from the camera that was mounted in the triangle itself, because we had one over there on the arc. We had one over to the east, and then we had that one in the triangle. I want to say that came from the triangle, but then even though it's looking up, it's still a little bit of at an angle. Like, which way was it facing? Was that, when you see those, were they going south? Were they going north? I don't remember. That too many details in that for me to keep them straight.
yeah,
Was that simultaneous to the drones, or was it afterwards?
Again, I don't remember that data. That'd be a great question to ask Erik.
If it were simultaneous, it reminds me of how there's been sort of like that weird reflective data, right? Like where it's almost been like a mirror image of something happening, because there are so many of them and they are kind of in a line, like what we saw with the drones. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to ask Erik.
Yeah. Erik is much better at remembering the details like that than I am.
Oh man, that guy. Yeah, he's something else. But yeah, this was definitely, and we didn't see the which is coming up next week as the and I'll show this picture here real quick, but it was the drone Mageddon. I think somebody called it drone Mageddon. And they were just dropping out of the sky. So we're looking for, I was hoping this was going to be in last night's episode. Now we hear that they're coming back, and this was previewed to be in next week's show. These things dropping, and it shows you ducking under a tent, or you were under a tent. I don't know. You were trying to get out of the way of these things falling out of the sky. So we're going to get to see this next week. And of course we'll talk about it quite a bit. Tim, let's see. He said, could you ask Thomas if he, ask if Thomas have seen the drones on AGT, which they won the golden buzzer. I don't know about that.
America's need a clarifying question there. I'm not quite sure what he's asking.
I will say, watching the trailer for next week, after hearing you say that they had come back this year with like all these safeguards in place to make sure there weren't issues, it seems like the ranch kind of came back with its own.
Yeah.
Because it definitely, it feels like it went on high defense by them falling out of the sky. It looks like.
Wait till you see. And and there's a piece of data that's going to come out of this that's going to be very disturbing.
Oh, another brown socks moment. All right.
Yeah. And I don't know if that data will come out. Like, I don't know when the review sheet shows, right? So obviously we do the experiment and then we do the review. The review gives us time to go through the data and comb through it, see what else we captured. But there's a piece of data related to what's upcoming. This very, very disturbing.
Oh, wow. Okay. We'll look forward to that. Y Ward says, can Thomas explain the UFO landing site that and the deputy port? Well, he did kind of talk about that a little bit. That site, you guys have you looked over that site where he showed you where the metal was? Have you scanned it?
I will tell you that I feel very good about our follow-up on his visit.
Fantastic.
We actually went to pretty good lengths to do our due diligence on that. So how much of it is yet to be seen, that I'm not sure, but I'll just tell you, I feel good about our efforts in that. And that crash site, or the alleged crash site, I will say, that's right. So that cow that just died last November, that just seemed to like drop straight down.
Yep.
And that is exactly the same location. That's under that tree.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
and then the other cow that died in season 1 is just up the fence line from that, right? Then we had another cow that she didn't die, but she went nuts. The one that you see down there when Bryant and I and Caleb go down, it's at night, and she's normally a calm cow, and she was like out of her mind. She was charging us. She was trying to hit us, just absolutely going crazy. We pulled her off the ranch, and interestingly enough, when Glendon came down and grabbed her and got her off the ranch, he said within a day or two she was back to her mellow, calm self. So, and she was right there under that same tree.
Wow.
At that site. So what is it about that spot that's causing so much disturbance? We personally, I can't vouch for the crash. What I can vouch for is we have seen cows now on multiple incidences reacting to that, or seemingly reacting to that space.
Wow.
And what's interesting is that I feel like people can make comments about the cows, the cattle, and having these things happen. But what I think is great is the fact that you guys only talk about the ones that really have strange circumstances around them. Because Thomas, I'm pretty sure if I were to look at my message exchange with you, 98% of them involve cows on the ranch being like, oh, the cows are on the homestead, or there's a cow that looks like they're injured somewhere. And that stuff is normal stuff, even if it's shocking for like insiders to see a cow die or what have you. And that doesn't show up on the show. Like, you guys are very meticulous about being able to differentiate between this being like a normal cow death versus an unusual cow death. And I think that viewers probably don't realize that other cows die on the ranch, but you guys are only really showing to the general public the ones that do have some oddity to it. Like the ones by the tree or what have you.
Or the calf going in circles. We brought that up just before you got here at the beginning, the calf that was going in circles, and it had the white eye, the hemorrhaging from the eyes and the swollen brain. And I guess we found out later that the calf was taken off the ranch with the mother, and everything seemed to be much better once
still alive. The calf is still alive. I need to check with Glennon and make sure, but if I remember correctly, it's still blind. It never regained its vision, but all of their faculties are fine, and it seems to be getting along in life all right. Thank goodness. I think they've got enough other senses that they can get themselves around. But look, cows die in ranching, but to that point, it's also, I wonder now, like, honestly, that cow in season 1, we had the vet come out and say it was rapid onset, pneumonia.
Yep.
And in my mind, I'm like, well, that kills lots of cows every year. There's nothing real unique about that. Now, did we capture a black object above it at the same time? Well, yes, we did. That makes it interesting, right? Yep. Like, what caused it was rapid onset stress-induced pneumonia. So something stressed the cow, and in a rapid period of time, it got pneumonia and it died. So then the question is, what stressed it? Well, I don't know. Maybe there's lots of things that probably stress cows. So I was like, all right, I don't really think there's much to it. It wasn't until we drag old Betsy off and we leave her, and then she doesn't decompose properly. That's when it really started getting my attention. Is like when the predators don't touch it, the maggots aren't setting in on it. The typical decomposition, as you would expect, doesn't take. That's when it caught my attention, and it makes me wonder. Ranchers have cows die all the time. Is it truly just accidental causes, or is there something further that's not being diagnosed because we don't know what to look for? What if there's something in the atmosphere or in the elements in nature that's causing these deaths that isn't natural? Maybe we could get to the bottom of it, save some cows' lives or something. But to your point, Shannon, like, I have to say that I've almost erred on the side of like, oh, well, it's just that cows die. That's part of ranching. And it's taken me some time to reprogram my brain to say, okay, even if it appears to be something of mundane origin, we need to investigate this out and see. And now that we're starting to see this additional things, I'm like, well, maybe more ranchers are having more cows die in a bigger area that they write off as being, well, that cows die, but there's maybe more to it than that. And it really does. An interesting fact here. We filmed season 1 summer of 2019. At that point, I'd been on the ranch for 3 years. We had cows on the ranch all 3 years leading up to the filming. In those 3, and we actually had more cows than we did while we filmed. We actually brought a different rancher on for season 1, Kelly Crozier, and we didn't put as many cows on because we didn't want them getting in the way. Interestingly enough, up to that point, we'd never had a single incident of cow death.
Really?
Sick. Yeah,
Wow.
the
Oh,
previous
wow.
rancher we had 0 issues with cows the first 3 years I was there. So why suddenly when we start filming are we now starting to have, and it seems like every year there seems to be more and more incidents. And so I'm thinking this is interesting that the first 3 years we had 0. And ever since we've had something that seemingly happen every year.
Wow.
Now, were you guys running experiments before you were filming, or no? Like, did your planned experiments coincide with filming?
No. So were we shooting off rockets? Were we doing that stuff? No. And were we? It was what Erik likes to call observational science, right?
Got it.
Observe it and see what's going on before we make. Matter of fact, the first couple of years he was there, my instructions were to make as minimal of an impact as possible. So when we're upgrading things, Brandon's instructions to me, Erik's instructions to me was to do least impactful things as possible. Even when I was building the roads around the perimeter of the ranch, if there's a space between sagebrush, I went around rather than through. And so if you look at the roads from above, if they look squiggly like this, it's because my directive was to make the least amount of changes as possible. It was more of observational science than it was experimental.
Wow.
So cow deaths, not to say that it was what caused it, but they do seem to kind of correlate, because it also seems like you guys, this is one question I was going to ask you, this season has been insane. There's been more this season than we've ever seen before. Does it feel like it's been more this past, like your last filming season? Did it feel like it was a lot more?
Season 5 was like, I'm just going to tell you right now. I mean, we're watching, what was last night? 10 or 11? I can't remember.
11 was last night. Yep.
So I'm sitting here thinking in my mind, having not seen the episodes, I'm like, we have 3 episodes left. And I'm willing to bet we'll have the wrap up. One will be the last episode. There'll be the wrap up thing, which is incredible. So that really leaves 2 more, 12 and 13 left. And I'm thinking, I know still, and I know what's shown on television and what hasn't shown on television. And my only thought is, I don't know how they're going to fit it all in.
Wow. It's funny because Ron had made a comment. He said, only on Skinwalker Ranch can disturbing data be looked forward to.
Right.
That is so true, Ron. Oh, yeah. And, you've said before, in going back to the cow thing, and we'll start to wrap this up, but going back to the cows thing, you had mentioned, I forget where you said this. I don't know if it was in the Insiders or whatever. And I've always tried to be so very careful watching the Insiders and then not divulging that information to the general public, because you need to be an insider. But I don't remember where you actually said it, but you said something about this was the one time where you really had to question, whether or not to leave the ranch. I think you were, and I don't know if that was the cow thing or what episode or what instance was it? The calf thing, yeah. Because you talk about that, it could happen if it's happening to them. What's the possibility it could happen to a human that's there? I mean,
that calf, we know for absolute 100% certainty That calf was just fine 30 minutes earlier because
Wow.
Bryant literally, that calf and 2 other ones, and they all got the ear tags in them, but they had gotten through the fence and they were kind of pushing up towards where we were sitting there filming. And Bryant got up. They're commenting about it and talking about it. Bryant went over there and pushed them back over with the rest of the herd. And that calf was one of those 3. We know that for absolute positive 100%. That calf was just fine. So to watch this calf sit there and spin circles and get its brains cooked right in front of us, literally so close to where the guys were sitting there in the tent. It could have been any of us. And probably for me, somebody that got hit with something like that and almost lost my life. I mean, I got hit with energy, and I haven't gone into that, but sitting there watching an animal suffer from that really, I'm like, oh my gosh, that could have been any one of us.
Yep.
And then we have no idea where it came from, how it happened. Like, we don't know. Does that happen every day? Does it happen? Was that a one-time thing? Is it happening all over the ranch? Is it just that area? I mean, I could tell you, I didn't stand in that specific area any time before my injury. So yeah, it's very disturbing. And it does make me like, I'll tell you, I have been so excited to film every year. And season 5 was so intense and we had such disturbing things happen. It just seemed like start to finish. And like I say, I don't know how they'll fit it all in the last 2 episodes. Or maybe they'll throw it into the last episode too. I don't know. But even then, it's not enough. That I'm looking and I'm like, moving forward, I don't know that I can, honestly, I don't know I can look you in the eye and say I'm excited to go back and do it again.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about that. I mean, yeah, that's something that you have to take into consideration for sure. I mean, I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal work out there. And I mean, there's so many people here that would jump at the chance to do something like what you're doing there. But then again, would you? I mean,
in practicality versus in fantasy, I feel like there are a lot of people that romanticize the ranch in a way that's like, oh, this would be such a fun adventure, but in like the reality of it is it's dangerous work. It's there's
absolutely.
Actual risk involved.
That's what somebody had asked earlier. Was that a warning? That calf thing happening with the calf. The other thing too. Shoot, I just lost my train. Oh, the thing in the water, the animal that was found in the water that was decomposing in the water. We didn't see anything more about it. And I hate to ask that question because it may come up later, but was there anything more found out about that we may hear about?
Well, I can tell you for certain that it didn't stop with just us being like, all right, well, we think it's that.
We got the jawbone was looked at. That was aired, obviously, but that was all we saw.
I can say that there has been much further analysis done on that.
Good.
I imagine that there'll be more to come about that in the future.
Okay. Fantastic. Wow. Well, I tell you, honestly, we've gone over the 2-hour mark, and I knew this was going to be a long one, not only because you were here, and we'd love to hear what you're willing to share with us here tonight. And thank you so much for that. But also because we were covering 2 episodes because I missed last week. I was on vacation and missed last week. And so, guys, Mike, Shannon, do you have anything else you'd like to ask? I know that the chat is probably going nuts right now because they've asked several questions during the show tonight. Oops. Oh, hit a button there. Sorry about that. Yeah. So you guys, yeah. Woo. Anything, Shannon? Are you? I know there could be a million more questions, but
I always have a million questions. I won't go through those. I just thank you, Thomas, for taking the time to sit and talk with us. It's always great to talk with any of you all, but we appreciate your time because we know you're busy.
You guys are great. I always enjoy my time with you. So thanks for having me on.
Mike, is that it for you?
Yeah, the extra insight is
absolutely.
huge. It's hugely valuable and makes all of this so much more interesting and addictive.
Yep. Invite him
Yeah.
back right now. Coach says invite him back right now. Well, he already said, Coach, he would come back and tell us more. I always want to do like a season. I'd love to have Brandon come on at the end of the season and kind of wrap it all up for us. That'd be awesome. Anyway, I don't know if that'll ever work out, but it would be awesome to have all of you guys, actually, several of you, come on at the end of the season and kind of wrap it all up for us. But we'll talk about that. So if you would hang out just a minute, Thomas, don't leave just yet. Folks, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. This has been fantastic. And again, we've got a hats off to Thomas for taking time out of his busy schedule to come here with us tonight. We really appreciate that. And we really appreciate all of you joining us here for this show. Tell your friends, if you like the content of our show we did here tonight, please give us a thumbs up. We love that. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because it really helps to get it out there to more and more YouTubers watching this show. So we really appreciate each and every one of you. Mike and Shannon, thank you so much. Christina, thanks for doing the chat along with Linda working the chat as well. Thank you guys so much for all that hard work, and Jan for doing the synopsis for both shows. Thank you on that. We'll catch you next time right here on the J Free 906 podcast. Everyone have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next week, Wednesday night, 7:30, right here at the J Free 906 podcast. Good night.